Maryland's 6th District, a byproduct of congressional maps redrawn following the 2010 census. Spanning across Montgomery County, Frederick County, Garrett County, and Allegheny County, the 6th District's lines have been redrawn to crack the Republican vote and flip the district from being a safe Republican seat to being reliably Democratic. Republicans make up 31.9% of Maryland's population, but only hold 12.5% of congressional seats. Maryland Republicans are challenging the map in court in a case called Benisek v. Lamone, alleging that their votes are diluted by the state's partisan district map. The process of redrawing boundaries of congressional districts with a certain goal in mind is called gerrymandering. Gerrymandering is not always detrimental to the democratic process. It can be used to ensure equity in representation or to comply with federal regulations. Most often, however, it is used to hurt political or racial minorities by diluting their vote. Partisan gerrymandering, as defined by the opinion in an Arizona case, is, quote, the drawing of legislative district lines to subordinate adherents of one political party and entrench a rival party in power.
And the question of whether that kind of political gerrymandering, which has gotten very sophisticated, is constitutional, has never been squarely addressed by the U.S. Supreme Court.
Gerrymandering isn't limited to Maryland, but the state exhibits one of the most severe cases. 3 major cases: Gill versus Whitford in Wisconsin, Common Cause and the League of Women Voters versus Rousseau in North Carolina, and Benisek versus Lamone in Maryland, are challenging gerrymandering. Plaintiffs allege that the process is unconstitutional.
So the real issue is not how weird the lines look. The real issue is whether or not the state's congressional delegation fairly represents the political will of the people in the state.
They gerrymander in order to try to get advantage politically or for a racial or ethnic group. Historically, both Democrats and Republicans have done gerrymandering for their advantage, and also basically white people have tried to diminish the influence of people of color, via the way that they draw districts. And so that can be racial gerrymandering, but it can also be what we call vote dilution.
In 2010, as mandated by the Constitution and population shifts, Maryland's General Assembly redistricted the state. Democrats, then with a majority of 6-2, voted for a map that removed 70,000 Republicans from the state's 6th district by packing them into the 1st congressional district and cracking them into districts dominated by Democrats. In the next election, Democrat John Delaney defeated incumbent Republican Roscoe Bartlett by a margin of 20.9%, despite the 6th district being known as a safe Republican seat prior to redistricting. Then State Senator Jamie Raskin voted for the current Maryland gerrymander in 2011.
Between a Democratic gerrymander and a Republican gerrymander, I voted for the Democratic gerrymander, and I suppose that I always would. But I would like to get beyond Democratic and Republican gerrymanders.
Gerrymandering creates situations in which certain demographics of voters are underrepresented and unaccounted for. Their votes are essentially silenced, a violation of the First and 14th Amendments. This year, citizens of the 6th District challenged the map in court in the Benisek v. Lamone case. They allege that the state is violating their First Amendment right of free speech through partisan gerrymandering.
So until the Supreme Court rules on it, you're going to have all kinds of sort of disparate decisions in different states that, will lead to different outcomes, and we probably need one standard through the guidance of the Supreme Court in the cases that they're considering now.
Your right to vote is an important First Amendment activity. And if it's undermined, if you are singled out, essentially, told, well, you're a Democrat, so we're going to draw you into this kind of district, then that is a violation of your First Amendment. At least that's the claim that's being put forward.
The 14th Amendment guarantees each person equal protection under the law. States cannot discriminate against voters based on their party identification. The 14th Amendment also bars any state from, quote, enforcing any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. Voting is a privilege of citizens of the United States and therefore cannot be inhibited by any state through gerrymandering. Maryland Attorney General Brian Frosh has dutifully defended Maryland's current district map. Commenting on the event in a Baltimore Sun article, Brian Frosh said, quote, "All of plaintiffs' arguments hinge on a single false premise, that individuals who affiliate with a party have a right to maintain electoral successes gained by their party under prior redistricting maps." Brian Frosh's defense of maps that promote partisan gerrymandering raised questions about representation and democracy in the United States. Article 1, Section 4 of the Constitution states that, quote, "The times, places, and manners of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof." Many interpret this as meaning that state legislatures are allowed to dictate regulations regarding the conduction of elections for representatives and senators, supporting the practice of partisan gerrymandering. Cases such as Benesek v. Lamone and Gill v. Whitford's evaluation by the Supreme Court put voting rights at stake. In Gill v. Whitford, the Supreme Court's decision depends on Justice Kennedy's vote.
But Kennedy said, look, I would love to get rid of partisan gerrymandering, but there's no neutral standard. And then you're asking the courts to do the same thing that you're asking politicians to do, which is make a judgment based on their own bias and their own ideology.
State legislatures must also take initiative on creating solutions to end partisan and racial gerrymandering through independent committees, multi-member districts, or creating anti-gerrymandering pacts between states.
The First Amendment defends free speech empowered by the vote, and the 14th Amendment guarantees equal rights and protection to all.
The Constitution indicates that any gerrymander clearly restricting voters' voices is unconstitutional. It is time that Democrats and Republicans look across state and party lines to the Constitution that binds us all together.